All right, so welcome back into another podcast today. We are going to dive in a little bit deep with Cody Carbone, who's going to be joining us here in a moment. And we're going to get into where the regulations and the movement in DC are currently at. And that'll be breaking down everything from Clarity Act and so on. You guys don't want to miss it. Let's just jump right in. All right, so let's get into the first topic today. One of the things, of course, that everybody's asking about, of course, is the issue that is happening around these XRP ETFs. And I want to share something with you guys. Obviously, as you guys know, Bitwise is getting ready to, actually has already launched. They've landed on the New York Stock Exchange today. And this is getting pretty heated because it is really flowing around mainstream interest accelerating on XRP. As you guys know, this has exploded over the last week with, of course, Canary Capital breaking the record for the largest ETF up to now. We'll know a little bit later as to how this plays out for Bitwise. But again, this is going to be something interesting to watch, especially with the current status of where the market is sitting right now, with Bitcoin trading at under 90,000 as we record. So big day ahead here for XRP as we continue to see a lot of activity there. Another one that I want to get into, of course, as you guys know, is the staking potential here on XRPL. They are looking at this. It appears that Ripple is evaluating this very strongly, and this could be a big factor starting to flow into the community, especially with staking. I know you guys have probably heard the news this morning with BlackRock filing a trust, an ETH trust, for staking. That, of course, changes the game, and mainly because it starts to make so many more people out there in traditional finance aware of how staking works in some of these organizations. So be on the lookout for that one. It's a big one. Another thing to be on the lookout right now for is this right here. The delayed September jobs report shows U.S., of course, added 119,000 jobs, which was more than expected. So still unemployment rate holding at 4.4, even though I feel like you guys know that my position is that this data in most cases is at best inaccurate. And I won't go further into that, but I believe that this data is severely underreported. Whether this is a good thing for markets or if we're going to continue to see some pressure on markets, I think as we move into December 10th, the next FOMC meeting, which it appears right now based on Polymarket that we are not going to get a rate cut. And this has been something that everybody's been talking about. So these are the key metrics that we are tracking right now. Obviously, the Fed's mandate is clearly guidance toward the job market, especially around unemployment. This data, along with more data coming into Chair Powell, may start to loosen things up. We will see. December 10th, just around the corner. We will be doing a full live stream over on the main channel PBN, so make sure and stick around for that. It's going to be a good one. Okay, as you guys know, we've been and had the digital chamber on before. Cody Carbone has joined us and is going to be coming in to the show. Cody, how are you?
Doing well, Paul. Great to see you.
Yeah. So let's get into it today. I want to learn a little bit more about what's happening in DC as we speak with the Clarity Act. Give us a rundown of where we are today, because it seems to be getting pushed back and now it looks like into 2026. What's the update?
That's right. This is a 2026 endeavor right now. We're still optimistic that we can get a market structure bill done. The parties are talking again. That's great. Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats said there is more motivation now to get talks moving and progressing. What I'm looking for, we have two committees that are working on this in the Senate right now. The Clarity Act passed the House earlier this year. They started from a place of strength because the House Financial Services Committee and the House Ag Committee worked on that bill together. We don't have that happening in the Senate right now. The Senate is not taking the Clarity Act up as passed the House. They want to do their own thing and put their own twist on it. So you have the Senate Banking Committee and the Senate Ag Committee not working together, working in silos right now.
Yeah.
The Senate Banking Committee has a Republican only draft that's out there, and they're negotiating right now with Senate banking Democrats. The Senate Ag Committee just released their draft just last week, and that was a bipartisan draft, but it was incomplete. So there's a lot of steps that need to get done. Both committees need to mark up their drafts, they need to pass their drafts, they need to come to bipartisan consensus, and then put the two bills together, get one bill, pass the Senate, send it back to the House. That's all to say a ton of steps that are
Yeah.
needed to get this bill over the finish line and to President Trump's desk. So I'm looking at it right now as we're in November, late November, almost Thanksgiving. What's realistic to get done this year? I think to show that there is progress and that we are in a good place for early 2026, I'm just looking for the two committees to mark up their bills, have a
Yeah.
markup, have a public discussion. Then I will feel optimistic that we can still get a final market structure bill done next year.
So you're still very bullish on this going through, because I'm still concerned if this gets delayed or continuation because of some of these other issues that are facing the lawmakers right now. You look at everything from the Epstein files and beyond. The pressure is mounting to get a lot of activity going. Is there anything that could maybe sidestep this?
100%. I wouldn't say I'm very bullish. I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic. I am hoping that we can get this bill done. But to your point, Paul, there are a ton of competing priorities. One, there's just not a lot of time.
Yeah.
We really have, they're in until till tomorrow, and then they're out for Thanksgiving, and then they're here for 3 more weeks for the rest of the year. And during that time, they have to pass an NDAA, a defense authorization bill,
Yeah.
tax extenders. Then they've got to fund the government again. They
Yeah.
only kick the can down the road a little bit. And then once the clock strikes January 1st, 2026, we're in an election year. And
Mm.
politics drives policy quite a bit. And so I'm cautiously optimistic because the parties are still talking about this. The senators are still prioritizing this. But every day that goes by, that optimism wanes quite a bit. And so if this doesn't happen soon, and I'm talking like if we're not sitting here in the end of Q1 2026 and a bill has been done and on the president's desk, it's unlikely to happen next year or this
Yeah.
Congress.
Yeah, that's my concern because you look at what is the status of the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act?
So that's being added to the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. That is a must pass bill. That is a bill
Mhm.
that has passed every Congress for the last 60 plus years. That was included into that bill. That bill is being debated and negotiated right now. So we will see if that bill continues to remain as part of the NDAA. It seems like there's a chance. They need to get Democratic support, though, and there isn't right now. But Republicans are pushing to have that included
Yeah.
in the final package. So we'll see. There's a lot of bartering that will need to go on between both parties, but there seems to be momentum and interest in keeping it in. So we will know by the end of this year if that bill is going to be signed into law.
All right. With that being said, there is a slew of states that are activating all sorts of things. We saw Kentucky get in on the action, their Blockchain Digital Asset Act. You saw North Carolina with House Bill 506. You saw Illinois, even Pritzker. You signed two bills this year. So then, of course, you got the New York operations up there trying to allow state agencies to accept cryptocurrencies. So that would be something. Is this a growing thing at the state level? Can you share anything?
It's a movement. I think every state is sitting there and seeing there are benefits to digital assets, whether we issue municipal bonds backed by
Yeah.
Bitcoin, like we saw in New Hampshire, or we issue licensing bills to provide clarity that the federal government is not providing right now to token issuers or to platforms. There is a growing interest at the state level to become hubs for digital asset
Yeah.
companies. They are viewing this like it was the dot-com boom of the early 2000s, that every state in the country wanted to find a way to bring in talent that were helping develop and build the internet. We're seeing it now on the digital asset side. It is just the next wave, this Web3 wave. So I think this is just the beginning. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking next year and all 50 states have signed digital asset bills, especially as the federal government slow walks a lot of the regulatory progress that we want and that we are pushing for. We're seeing a lot from the agencies and the administration, but Congress is slow, as we just alluded to at the top of the conversation. I think every state's going to get involved. We just actually at the Digital Chamber launched the Digital State Network to be more active in the states. Our
Okay.
member companies that we represent are demanding it. They want to go into the state houses. They feel comfortable with what's going in Washington. They want to have conversation with governors, with state elected officials. And so we will be very active in all 50 states next year.
Well, good. That's good news. Obviously, I think the bigger states out there with Florida, Texas, New York, California are going to be leading the way. But we're anticipating that. We work with a lot of people here in Florida, and it's interesting because we hold these meetings, these kind of seminars for businesses, and I'm starting to find politicians, at the local, even at the municipal level, starting to show up to these things. And a lot of times they're just listening because I think they're wanting to see how the businesses are responding, and it's very positive. Businesses are basically trying to build a debasement trade for their own
Uh,
treasuries, for
we're
sure.
getting to a point, Paul, where it doesn't matter if you're running for the White House or Congress or
Or
governor
mayor.
or the or mayor or the
Yeah,
local school board,
yeah,
that you need to have a position on
yeah.
crypto. You need to, because your constituents are going to demand it. And so it's great to see now we're seeing that new wave outside of Washington go into the local municipalities, state governments. I think it's only going to continue.
It's gonna be a big deal. I wanna share something else with you because this was new, today, and of course, it is a new strategic Bitcoin reserve bill that was introduced into Congress, by Warren Davis, where you can pay your taxes with Bitcoin, but the interesting thing is how this potentially could get into the strategic reserve. Can you share anything about what's going on here?
This just dropped, I think, 10 minutes before we started
Yeah,
talking.
it was early.
It's really exciting. This has been something that we've worked on with Congressman David's office for quite some time, that there is an interest to put Bitcoin into the strategic reserve by having Americans pay their federal taxes with Bitcoin. This is a way to fund the strategic reserve and allow more Americans who are holding Bitcoin right now and have
Mhm.
had nothing and nowhere to use it, to spend it, to pay their taxes, and to pay a public good. I think it's a pretty genius idea. It's a way to get very creative and to add more Bitcoin into the economy. I'm hoping that this bill, now that it's been out there for only a few minutes, it starts to build traction. It's going to build news and media, but how is it going to be received in Congress? That is going to come. I'm sure there are going to be people on the Republican side of the aisle who are very interested in this, like a Senator Cynthia Lummis, who has been pushing her own
Yeah.
strategic Bitcoin reserve bill, the Bitcoin Act. Hopefully, we can get some Democrats involved, but I think it is a very creative way to fund the reserve and then allowing people to use their Bitcoin for good services.
Yeah, I think this is it's interesting because it's likely that we'll probably see this start to pop up on other assets outside of Bitcoin into the
Yeah.
strategic reserve, whether it's Ethereum, XRP, you name it. It's likely to start seeing more of this.
And I think you're going to start to see this at the state level as
Yeah,
well. I mean, we've
yeah,
already talked about the municipal bonds in New Hampshire. I think you're going to see more states start to replicate this. Can you pay your state and local taxes through Bitcoin, through XRP, through Ethereum? I think this is going to be, it's
it's
a
going to be huge.
copycat government system. Well, it'll be huge.
Okay, so all right, we know the lobbying power of crypto has really become a thing. And you look at the current lobby organizations. I think Coinbase spent almost almost $1 billion, 970. It's interesting because you get such a unusual set of data points out of DC. Is there a place that tracks this to where you can see where some of these lobbies are actually giving you real and accurate data on what they're spending?
You can go to opensecrets.com. That'll show you, that is the best database where you can see where certain organizations are spending their money and what candidates or political parties
Right.
they're
Yeah.
spending it on. Now, a lot of this money goes to super PACs, and super PACs don't need to disclose who their donors are.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you might be able to see who Coinbase is specifically giving to, but if Coinbase is giving to Fairshake, which is one of the largest
Yep.
pro crypto super PACs, you're not going to see exactly where they allocated that money to what candidates or how much they gave.
Mhm.
That remains confidential, but you can go on Open Secrets and see where so many of these entities are spending their money in Washington, including where the Digital Chamber is spending their money in
Yep.
Washington.
Well, and you also have just so many businesses that are doing it as well. Andreessen Horowitz, a
Yep.
big proponent, Ripple Labs, Circle, even KuCoin for obvious reasons. But we're seeing a lot more activity out there. In terms of the packs themselves, if you look at the different packs that are out there, are there any one area that we're seeing more activity in crypto lobby right now? Whether it's the fair shake or where do you see it the most?
Um, uh, the super PAC area is huge. And then right now, most of the money is going towards pushing this market structure bill.
Mhm.
Almost all of the money we're seeing allocated from, I would say, token issuers and exchanges. They're the biggest donors. VC funds are always huge, like the
Yeah,
Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z. But it's the exchanges and the token issuers, the layer one token platforms that are really driving the crypto lobbying
yeah,
spend right now in DC. And a lot of it is going to pro market structure provisions, pro candidates that will support the market structure debate. Stablecoins was a huge part of the 2024 election. And
yeah.
now that that bill has gone through, it is all market structure. I would say, I'd be very interested what 2026 looks like and how the next few months of the market structure debate determine where some of these companies are spending their money.
Mhm.
Historically, at least in 2024, a majority of the dollars went to Republicans. There was bipartisan, though. Some of them went to Democrats as well. And there was a slew of pro crypto Democrats that were elected based off of or funded by pro crypto dollars. Let's see how market structure, if market structure fails and it's the crypto industry blames one party, how does that dictate where some of
Yeah.
that money goes? But I know that these super PACs, 2024 will be dwarfed by some of the money and dollars we're seeing that will be spent in 2026 and beyond. I think what 2024 did is it showed every crypto company out there how much impact you can have by spending real money on politics and how it can really change the game in terms of creating a friendly regulatory environment for you.
Mhm.
So I think some of those companies that might have sat on the sideline in 2024, just trying to see how this would shake out and could they really make an impact, are now going to be involved in 2026. And the numbers are going to be huge going into some of these political races.
Well, and you're going into the midterms. You also have these counterbalance lobby areas that seem to be gaining ground, and that's including the American Bankers Association. If you look at the ABA and just the presence that they've had so far, do you think they are pushing back right now on what's happening with Clarity?
It's tough. I don't think the banking institutions are pushing against Clarity. There's actually some provisions in Clarity that they like that would allow banks to work with permissionless blockchains. I think where they're trying to push is that they're trying to get a market structure bill done for some of those reasons, but they also want to keep their competitive advantage. So they're walking this fine line and trying to
Yeah.
keep this balance. And we're seeing it play out in some of the Genius Act implementation. I think they want to have the regulatory clarity to be able to offer some of the products that crypto companies are offering right now. And so then they can retake the market or take the market that crypto has built. They need regulation just as much as some of the crypto companies to do that. So I think they'll be very involved in pushing for these bills, but they're going to be doing it in a way where they think they can keep their competitive advantage.
Yeah.
On the political side, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we actually released a poll just a few weeks ago. One of the most fascinating things about crypto voters, and there is a huge block. I see sometimes people on Twitter who are anti-crypto saying the crypto voter is not real. That couldn't be further from the truth.
From the truth. Yeah.
They're real and they're single issue voters. They vote with their wallet. And that's not something new or novel, but they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be loud. They're going to vote, whether they lean Democrat or lean Republican. And we actually found that more often than not, they lean Democrat, but they vote with their wallets. They vote for the candidate that is pro crypto. And so it goes back to our point at the state level, federal level. If you're running for any office,
Right.
you need to be pro crypto because it will swing elections.
Huge in a big way. Well, other things you have to kind of consider is, the expansion of what's happening outside the United States. I don't know if you saw this tweet this morning. It was by Christopher Perkins. And this is kind of interesting because this is talking about the Basel Committee chair acknowledging that crypto capital rules should be reworked. And he kind of pushed in right on the top of what we're talking about right here. I'll zoom in on this for everybody. Not only do these proposals indict that crypto native assets, but they also are talking directly about the use of public blockchains like Ethereum, AVAX, Solana, Sui, Ripple, etc. So this would be interesting because it starts to put some pressure on the international theme.
Yeah.
And when you see the international theme starting to come into American politics, I mean, we already know how this is affecting DC as it is today. And when I say this, meaning international intervention in some way. Are House reps and senators at all thinking about what's happening outside the US to be able to make decisions?
Absolutely. The US still is somewhat behind other jurisdictions that
Yeah.
have been regulating crypto assets. And so, what the House members, what the senators are looking at, and what the administration is looking at, what's working overseas and what's not.
Hmm.
What can we take from those regulatory frameworks that is working overseas, and how can we adopt it here? The message, whether you're Republican or Democrat, but the message that has been sent from this administration is we're going to be the world leader in crypto.
Hmm.
And to do so, let's take from those jurisdictions that are already ahead and we will catch up and soon we will lead and everyone else will follow. I am very glad that we're seeing in some of these new, via the new capital rules internationally, that
Yep.
we have a vice chair at the Federal Reserve, Mickey Bowman, who has been very pro crypto, saying these rules were unrealistic. These rules are antiquated.
Yeah.
They don't comport to the digital asset ecosystem that we're seeing today and where we're going with mass adoption. And we're not going to stand for that. We need to make sure that we have clear regulatory rules that allow for crypto to be used by all. That is fantastic. The US is getting to the point where we are going to be the world leader. And if we keep pushing back on rules like this, antiquated rules, and we
Yep.
start to adopt the good of what's happening internationally, we'll be in a good spot. But we're looking to, you talk to members of Congress right now, they are very aware of what's going on in the UAE, in Singapore, in the EU with Mika,
China.
in the UK, and China. They know Russia, they know what's happening, and they're taking the good and they're taking the bad, they're learning from it, and they're creating the most hospitable regulatory environment in the world. And soon the entire world will follow, whether it's allies or adversaries, they will follow what we're doing.
When you look at the growth of the digital yuan, obviously our position being the US, anti-CBDC,
Yeah.
you kind of see these two factions that are starting to rise. This is very early on. It's kind of like almost the very similar to the birth of the internet, where we saw the United States take very dominant control of all the development that was happening within the internet. When you look at that, how are lawmakers? How are they digesting that? Because to me, it is the debate of our generation
Yeah.
in terms of how blockchain and crypto is going to be integrated into society, and the United States government is going to be the critical mechanism here. Do they know that?
I think they do, or at least they're learning and they're getting there. I
Yeah.
think the reason that the anti-CBDC bill got as much support as it has is because they looked at what China was doing.
Yeah.
And it is never the intention of the US government to follow China, or at least it shouldn't be. But that is the message we're hearing from lawmakers. This is about, if you look at the ethos of digital assets and blockchain technology, it is about freedom and the ability to be able to transact freely within one another. those ethos are starting to translate in American
Yeah.
politics, as especially as it comes to our economy. And so I think how China has developed the digital yuan and this autocratic method of, hey, we're going to look into and spy into your wallets. We're going to look into how you spend your money. That is exactly the opposite of what we want in the US. And so I think it has actually really helped to motivate both parties in the US to get something done as it relates to digital assets, to create a more friendly regulatory environment here as it relates to crypto as a whole, blockchain technology as a whole, and to do everything we can to compete against the digital yuan to make sure that never flourishes outside of China.
Yeah, that's going to be a key factor, I think, going forward, especially as we see this demographic shift on voters in the United
Yep.
States, which is starting to trend younger. And we're already seeing the movements now that I think could shift a lot of how our government is even constructed, from a demographic standpoint. Cody, I have a question for you. When you look and all the lawmakers there, who in the group, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. What I'm interested in, is there a set of lawmakers that are savvy enough around AI and crypto at the same time? Because I'm concerned that we could see movement by some bad actors, even here in the United States, that could start to blend crypto and AI together. And we could either
Yeah.
see good things happen or really bad things happen. Who are the lawmakers that I should be talking to about that?
I'll give you two, one Republican and one Democrat. And there's more than two, but as soon as you asked that question, there were two that immediately popped in my
Okay.
mind. One we've talked about this show already is Representative Warren Davidson from Ohio. You walk into his office and he has the Cypherpunk manifesto framed on his wall.
Okay.
He every time you talk to him, he talks about the nexus of crypto and AI and how we need to make sure that they can work together and that the US needs to lead on both simultaneously, because as we go into more of a digitally native society and economy, AI will work with crypto, crypto will work with AI. There's no other pathway forward. The other one is Rep. Richie Torres, Democrat from New York. And
Right.
every time you talked with him, it is the exact same thing. I am trying to figure out how crypto and AI are going to work together and how we create a regulatory framework where people who are building both simultaneously can collaborate
Yep.
and coordinate and can do so safely in the US under our regulatory perimeter, whether it's allowing for safe harbors or sandboxes at the agencies. These two gentlemen get it. They're smart, they're tech savvy, they play around with the technology. They're not just reading headlines and being like, "Oh, I can speak to like the investment thesis of these things." They understand how it works and what the potential is, and I think that's the most promising thing. They also understand younger voters. They get it.
Yeah.
And so I think those two leading the way over the next few years and educating their colleagues, we're in a good place.
Well, this is going to be a big one because I know right now we're just trying to get frameworks built, from, hey,
Yeah,
what are the rules? But I am a bit concerned that we haven't incorporated enough AI language
yeah,
and I understand it's still so early, but these AI, I won't call them lobbies, but these companies are now getting so powerful. If you look at just the shift that we've seen between NVIDIA, OpenAI, Grok,
yeah,
obviously Elon, very tied in to the Trump administration. I still think that this has been Elon's plan all along, is that he needs to get close to these administrations for the purpose of what he's doing with Grok.
yeah,
Um, and eventually could be integrated into payments and all. Who knows where this could go from an AI layer that could be essentially injected into crypto. So this is something I am concerned about. I'm glad it's Davidson, but I think we need a lot more people aware
yeah.
of this. What is the process for in DC? Someone like Davidson gets out there, he's trying to spread the news, but in a lot of these hearings, you got everybody's on an agenda.
Yeah.
How does somebody learn? If I'm a lawmaker in DC, how do you start talking to Davidson direct? What's the process there?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. There's no perfect recipe. So there's a few. You mentioned the hearings, and it's actually, one thing I'll give you to be optimistic about the AI conversation is the House Financial Services Committee just came out with their December hearing schedule.
Mhm.
All AI. They
Okay,
they
good.
get it. They know it's
Yep,
time right now, which is
yep,
great. Talk to industry groups like ourselves. talk to the companies directly. If you're a lawmaker, you're like, I need to get educated. Talk to your counterparts in Congress that you find are leading on this. Look for the
Mhm.
people who are introducing things. Talk to the administration, but it takes a lot of self-study. There's a lot of resources in DC. There's a lot of resources across the country. Look to what's happening internationally. I
Yeah.
always find those lawmakers that are looking not just in this US centric mode, but what is going on overseas that I can borrow here or know to never borrow here. Those lawmakers are always the most informed and ahead.
Yeah.
There's different caucuses. There's a congressional crypto caucus. There's a congressional AI caucus where they'll get together on a weekly or monthly basis and debate and talk the issues. So there are plenty of resources out there, but you have to go out and be proactive and want to learn and get smart on it.
I saw a caucus that you guys put up on your Twitter thread. What is this? Here we go. It was at the State Network launch party. Okay. And it was like a
The
younger
Future
group.
Caucus.
Future. Okay. Yeah.
So
What is that?
The Future Caucus identifies top lawmakers under the age of, I believe it's 40, under the
Okay.
age of 40 across the country. So they identify them not only in Washington, but at the state level too.
Yeah.
And they work with them to push a pro innovation agenda. They
Mm,
go into New York or they go into Florida and they find the top young Democrat, top young Republican. They ask them to build together a coalition within their state
yeah.
and say, okay, how can we move pro innovative policies? They're an incredible organization that's been around for almost a decade that is trying to bridge the partisan divide when it comes to innovation to ensure the US can lead. Highly
Yeah.
recommend everyone follow them out there. They're great. So we're partnering with them on our digital state network to make
Okay.
sure that all of those lawmakers are pro crypto as well.
Yeah. This is the group that I think gets needs to be approached the most because
Yeah.
these are the lawmakers that are going to be over the next 20, years and beyond. And what I'm a little concerned with some of the younger lawmakers, oh gosh, I hate to say this. Some of them, they go so far off the reservation, one way or the other. It doesn't,
Yeah.
who knows which side they're on. But I feel I understand they're trying to make a name for themselves. I get
Yeah.
that, so they go a little bit polarized. Um, that's the concern I have. I hope that we get some of these younger ones that are very crypto focused and understand the tech and understand both the opportunity and threat that we're going to see in AI, which is the area that we see the most. So I'm going to be watching this one very closely. Futurecaucus.org is the one I'm going to keep an eye on. I followed them this morning after I saw your tweet. So at
They're
least they
great.
got, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Okay. What else should I know for the first quarter of 2026? Is there anything critical that has to be done outside of market clarity? We get that. Anything else?
Tax clarity.
Yeah.
We have to talk taxes. If we can get a market structure bill, but if we're
Did
not
you see
getting tax,
the Japanese, what
no,
they
what
were
happened?
proposing? So their proposal was to drop the tax down to a flat rate of 20% for crypto. So a pretty big statement for
Yeah.
the Japanese. It was going from 55% to 20. They
That's
reported
it's
that's
We need
huge.
tax. It's huge. We need tax clarity more than anything. I always say, like, we can get market structure and that's great. But if we don't get tax clarity, then these tokens are still going to be issued out of more friendly tax environments like the Cayman Islands or
Yeah.
Bermuda or in Asia. We have to get tax clarity. We have to get a de minimis so people can actually use their crypto assets
Hmm.
to buy a cup of coffee if they
Yeah.
want and not have to report it and not get taxed with capital gains. There just needs to be more there, and the administration knows that. If you look at the White House Crypto Council report that
Hmm.
came out in July, there's a huge section on tax, and a lot of those recommendations that they had on different proposals to make the US more of a tax haven for digital assets can just be done by the IRS or Treasury. They don't need Congress. It is a quick swip to the pen from the Treasury Secretary. There is so much we can do on tax that doesn't require a huge legislative lift. That needs to happen over the next few months for
Well,
the US
that's
to be a
Besson.
leader.
I mean, he's very
Yeah.
pro crypto. So why are we not seeing activity moving in this direction?
We just need more voices to say, "Hey, you gotta go now."
Okay.
Like,
All right.
we're not waiting anymore. Push it,
We'll
push
help.
it, push it. Yeah, that I
We'll
appreciate
help.
it.
We'll help
Yeah,
get that. I know everybody loves us when we're talking about taxes and crypto. We just did a video last week, and back to the Japanese and some of their strategic moves. But their is it a prime minister? Yeah. Um, she's very aligned with what Trump is doing on a digital asset side, especially around stable coins.
yeah,
And to me, we're starting to see that line in the sand being drawn because the Japanese and the Chinese have already been kind of at it for a while. China, of course, has chosen the digital yuan, a controlled, CBDC, and gold as a potential store of value to help back that. Do you think we're going to see more countries like Japan, many of the EU countries starting to align with what the United States is doing around digital assets?
absolutely. I think we might see more agreements, treaties. We had a stablecoin agreement between the UK and the US.
Yeah.
People are going to start to follow the US because it is going to be the democratic way to do things and not the autocratic way to do things,
Mhm.
especially as the US frames it as we are competing with China,
Yep.
Russia at scale. I think that's just the beginning. You're going to see more countries like this approach the US saying, "How are you doing it? How are you getting it right? Why are all of the largest crypto companies in the world so desperate to come and take advantage of the most liquid capital markets in the world? How can we replicate things like that?" They're all going to follow us.
I love it. All right, man. You guys know what to do. Make sure and get over to. Oh, by the way, you guys have a big summit coming up, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
March.
Blockchain Summit.
So March 17th and 18th, we're moving it to 2 days for the first time. 2026 in DC. We had over 30 members of Congress last year. We're going to do the same again. Donald Trump Jr., as you just saw on the screen, will be there
Yep.
again. We'll have more folks from the administration come to DC. DCBlockchainSummit.com. Love to see everyone there.
We will be
Yourself
there.
included, Paul.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be there. I'll be
good.
there. That's an easy trip. Listen, Cody, it's always great catching up with you, and I'm glad that you guys are so on front of everything that's happening. Kudos to you and your work over at the blockchain group. All right, Cody. Well, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate everything you guys are doing. And again, thanks for dropping into the show today. We appreciate it.
Of course. Appreciate you, Paul. Thanks for having me on as always.
All right, you guys know what to do. Drop a like, share this video out to someone else because we're getting so many new viewers that I think are starting to transition from traditional assets. Can you believe that? People are coming over from stocks and bonds and looking at digital assets for the first time. And the way that's happening is because of you guys. So like and share. We'll catch you next time.